I'm Bob Wilson, Knoxville Raceway track historian. In the fall of 1953, the Fair Board had a couple of their members meet with some Fair Board members from the town of Oskaloosa, which is Mahaska County, and that's about 24 miles straight east from here. And they had already been sanctioning stock car races, which had become very popular after the Second World War. One of the things that the track was told to do was that they had to reshape the half-mile horse track, which the Marion County Fairgrounds was. And so the big thing that they did was put banking in the turns. That was suggested to them by those men from Mahaska County. They said that would make racing a whole lot better. And it did. There had been racing here for years and years, but not weekly. And it started racing after the Second World War here, but not anything that was weekly. So the banking of the turns was one thing. They had to put fences in because there were no fences, because we were in the process of running horses during county fairs. Lighting, because they intended to run on nights, and Knoxville would be racing on Friday nights in 1954. So the lights had to be secured, and repairs made to the grandstand. Most often there was just 18 cars to 25 cars in the 1954 season. There was 18 that very first night in 1954, June 4th, 1954. How I came about going to that first race was our neighbors in rural Knoxville, about 5 or so miles from the town itself. They were involved with a car that was sponsored by one of the grocery stores in Knoxville. There were several cars that had been put together. These are old stock cars, remember, 34, 36 coupes, 35, that builders put together. They had to race them stock. That's why they were called stock cars. They couldn't put racing components on them. And so our neighbors offered to give us a ride to the races. I didn't know anything about it until my parents said, "Would you want to go?" Well, yes, I want to go. And I haven't stopped going. That first night, there was time trials, which has become a tradition at Knoxville. Quick time that night was just under 32 seconds flat, set by Jack Delano. There were heat races, and then there was the main event, which was won by Kenny Crook. Kenny was originally from Gladbrook, and he raced quite a bit around the Waterloo area. And then he got interested in the weekly racing at Oskaloosa and at the Mahaska County Fairgrounds. And he moved to Oskaloosa, but before the 1954 season was over, he moved to Knoxville and had his racing car out of, I think it was a Shell station, Shell gasoline station here at Knoxville. In that very first year, the cars were raced from a standing start. They had batteries in them and clutches, and so the cars would come out onto the track and line up without the aid of a push truck. And so they would be lined up on the track, and the flagman would give them the green flag from that point, which meant there was a lot of pushing and shoving and gearing and smoke and noise from the track as the cars maneuvered to get into that first turn. There was a time when Knoxville was no longer in the Southern Iowa Stock Car Racing Association, and that's when the fairgrounds hired Marion Robinson to promote the races at Knoxville. He, in turn, decided that he wanted to race at Knoxville on Saturday nights, and 24 miles south of Knoxville was the track at Sheraton, Iowa, and they were racing on Saturday nights. So what he did was he promised a much larger purse to the drivers and changed the Knoxville venue to a Saturday night, and he won. And Sheraton then defaulted and started racing on Friday nights. When I look around the fairgrounds, and I'm sitting here in the fairgrounds booth over at the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame, the changes that I see on this fairgrounds are absolutely amazing. I never would have guessed that this Hall of Fame would be sitting here, because back in the day there were government storage bins that were lined up along this second turn and backstretch. Huge, big, round metal storage bins filled with corn. And I look at the infield from my vantage point right now, and most of the infield was weeds. It wasn't even mowed in 1954. Just a front area where they had the race cars. They were all on open trailers, of course. The giant grandstand with suites across the front chute is just absolutely amazing structure. And I've lived here all my life, and when I drive through this town and I see what has happened to this place, I'm really I'm just really shocked at what has happened in the years since I first came here in 1954.